What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Dylan Talks Tone. Today we're going to talk about Tele versus Strat. This is one of those things that can be polarizing in one way, like, Android versus Apple or Ford versus Chevy or whatever you want to say. Or it could be just like, well, duh, I know they're different because one's a Tele and one's a Strat, and we don't need to talk about this. But I think spending a couple of minutes on the development of this guitar, why they both exist, when they both existed, the chronological development of them, is important to understand that these guitars are actually very, very similar. So, more similar than you would think. And the differences between them are for reasons that a lot of people, I think, misunderstand. So let's dive straight into that after we do a little puppy training. Hey, Zeba, down. Good boy. Zeba, hey. You should tell them why they should subscribe, right? Like if they don't subscribe, they hate puppies or something? Probably? When you think? Huh? Makes sense, right? Say, if you don't subscribe, you hate puppies. Good boy. No puppies on couches. Okay? We're still working on that one. Well, as he gets bigger, because he's going to be huge, he's getting a little more adventurous, is what it is. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about one big thing. The Telecaster, when it came out in 1954, which was 3 or 4 years later than the widely accepted and developed Zeba down, widely and accepted date of 1951 for the Telecaster, when they really started calling it the Telecaster, and that's what it was not to be an addition to the model line. In 2024, when somebody comes out with a new guitar, typically it is a addition to the model line. It's like, hey, I'm coming out with another model. It complements this old model, and so now we have two. Fender's intention with the Stratocaster was to make upgrades, to make improvements, and then to basically discontinue the Telecaster. It was not meant to be a side-by-side model. Fortunately for the rest of us, that didn't work out that way. But as a result of knowing that, you're going to see a lot more similarities than differences between these two guitars, especially when you start to look at the reasons for the changes. So we've got 25.5-inch scale, obviously. We've got string through body. However, one has a vibrato and one does not. But the neck mounting is the same. The neck pocket shape is a little bit different. The peg head shape is a little bit different. That's not because of tone. That's because it's easier to fit a sticker on there or a water slide decal or otherwise brand the guitar. There's no real practical difference. It doesn't change the string pull or anything like that. It's just a matter of he wanted an evolution, he wanted it to look different, and he wanted a place to put a bigger brand name. Because you got to remember, this guitar didn't have one for a while, and it didn't have the Fender name on it. It just had Telecaster. Well, it had Broadcaster first, right? So you think about the evolution of how this worked. Broadcaster, then none, then Fender, Telecaster. Well, now we need more room. So let's go ahead and make this peg head bigger. Let's talk about some other similarities here. So when we start to look at, obviously we have maple necks, we have, well, this guitar has a rich light fretboard, but we have rosewood fretboards, we had maple fretboards, we had the maple neck. The construction of the neck evolved over time. A lot of that stuff more had to do with manufacturing than anything else. It really didn't have anything to do with tone as much as it had to do with manufacturing. Even within the development of the Telecaster, the way the pickups were developed was as a result of an adaptation from a steel guitar. And then adding on a neck pickup later, but then we had to go ahead and add, mess with the output of this neck pickup, so therefore we had to use a smaller wire, different whine count, etc. And that's why we have the differentiation in size and tone from those two pickups. So then, once we start to develop, say a bit down, good boy. Once we start to develop the second guitar, the Stratocaster, then there are some very interesting similarities there as well. One of the things people don't realize is when you look at the angle of the bridge pickup, if you measure it with a caliper, it's the same. So the angle of the bridge pickup, the location of the bridge pickup in relation to the saddles. So if you take a caliper and you measure from, and this changes with guitar setup, but basically, if you measure from the center of the saddle here to the center of the pole piece here, okay, on that guitar, and then you come over here and measure the same thing here, you'll see it is the same. So the space between this architecture is the same. The other thing that's actually the same that people may not think about, because we never really sit these next to each other, is if we go from the center of the pull pieces on the bridge pickup to the neck pickup, okay, we'll grab that guitar, and then we come over here and we do the same thing here, we'll see that it is the same. So what we're really doing there is we're really just taking an adaptation of one guitar and moving it to the other. Now, because we were not making, and we were developing, Fender was developing a guitar from scratch, more or less, or adapting this one to this one, not using a steel guitar pickup. Therefore, whine counts, magnet types, magnet heights, coil size, all that stuff could be developed from scratch. That's why we come up with a different size pickup in comparison to this one. So if you look at the sizes of all three pickups, they're all different, right? So the bridge pickup in this guitar is a different size. They're not the same size as a Strat pickup, and this pickup is different from both of those two. Because this was an adaptation from another guitar, this was to match this, and it had this base plate on it that was not a tonal thing, but a functional thing. Then we had to make a tonal consideration on how this pickup was developed so that they would match. So then, this is kind of just like a bunch of fumbling around to get this thing to work right, really. So then you come over to the Strat, and it's taking that concept, pickup distances, pickup placement, all that kind of stuff within the scale length that stays the same. Within, basically, the center core of the guitar is still the same. So where the bridge is, the bridge placement, because of scale length, the scale length itself, the pickup placement is the same. But because we don't have to adapt and we're starting over with pickups, then we come up with this third size of pickups that works in this guitar. And what's interesting is then this design of pickup then later on gets adapted more or less into the Mustang. So kind of. So it's just very interesting that these guitars are actually more the same than different. The ergonomics of the guitar obviously are different because he wanted to make an ergonomic change that made the guitar more comfortable to play. In fact, when I was younger, I hated Telecasters because I just felt like it was like a 2x12 with strings on it, which it kind of is, right? Because there was no consideration really given much to ergonomics at the time of developing this guitar. So then you have that in this, but really the center of the guitar is still the same, except we add a vibrato. So then we add the vibrato, and then we add a middle pickup, and then we add controls to adjust the tone of the middle pickup separately from the neck pickup. So it's really just an adaptation. This is a Telecaster in different clothes with some additions to it. Now, obviously, it's taken on its own life. It's become its own thing over time, and we don't even care anymore. These are about as different as they can get from this to this, right? Like, they're just not even the same. However, when you really look at the elements that make up these guitars, they're very similar. Super interesting stuff. I absolutely love this. Now, what makes these guitars, in my mind, the funnest thing ever, is this. So ultimately, the fun, to me, with Fender style guitars is the modularity, right? Like if you go back to what they have in common, and that is Leo Fender's idea of making something that each piece could be replaced or upgraded or whatever. I think that's really cool, you know, so you can literally completely change the attitude of a particular guitar with just a drop in. You know, we make these loaded pick guards. This is really cool. I got some rifle filigree engraved with the laser and stuff. Super fun. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, maybe this doesn't match this guitar or whatever. I was just showing it as an example, you know. And it's not, to me, it's not just about the looks, or it could be, right? Like, we buy with our eyes, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's going to be people that get in the comments and are like, it's all about the tone, and I don't buy for looks and whatever. Yeah, you're lying to yourself. You want your guitar to look cool, right, bud? You want your guitar to look cool. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, you put cool stuff in it. But I think it's really fun to be able to have modularity. And then when it comes to parts casters, that is fun too. I just think this design of a guitar is super cool. And I know there's gonna be Fender people, there's gonna be Gibson people, there's gonna be whatever, Strat people, Tele people, but it doesn't necessarily matter. As long as you don't get stuck to a particular tradition, you can do things like put a single hum setup in this particular guitar, or 2 humbuckers in this guitar, or 3 P90s, or 2 P90s, or whatever you want to do can be done. The possibilities are super endless. And then when we go to the Telecaster thing, this is where it gets really fun, but also controversial, right? So you'll have this traditional Tele. Let's say we were to go ahead and put a humbucker in the bridge, people would flip out and be like, that's not a Tele anymore. Who cares? What's really cool about it is the center portion of this guitar, the 25.5-inch scale, string through body, slab of a piece of wood, and then we can go ahead and put in, you know, whatever we want, whether we want a push-pull here for a humbucker coil split in the neck with a different pick guard. Like, let your imagination go and use these guitars not so much as necessarily a traditional holding to tradition, but instead use them as a palette, as a template for whatever you want it to be. And that's what I really love about the Fender style guitar, because it's just a puzzle, right? And it's something that you can have a lot of freedom of creativity with. Not only the tone of a guitar, but also the look and the feel, and that you can make it yours. I think that's really cool. This guitar is 100% basically stock, except for we have our flat 6 Tele pickups in it. This guitar is actually one of my builds from a few years ago. I actually built this guitar for my grandfather. And this has our Highway 99 pickups in it. It's actually got one of our loaded pickguard setups in it. But we could take one of our loaded pickguard setups and drop it in here and make it a different color, make it a different tone, make it a whatever, in a matter of a string change, some screws, and 2 solder joints, right? Like, it's that fast, which makes this super fun. And I guess that is kind of my whole point of this video is, instead of being super stuck on Strat versus Tele, look at them both as kind of every Tele, every Strat as a parts caster, if that makes sense, and treat them as a palette to build whatever you want out of them. I think it's super fun. So let me ask you, get in the comments, which one is your favorite, Strat or Tele, in the most traditional setup? Second of all, if you were going to build your, you know, let's say you were just gonna like put together your jigsaw puzzle of a guitar, and you know, I want this neck pickup, I want this bridge pickup, I want this switching, I want this knobs, I want whatever. What platform would you start with? Would you start with a Strat platform, or would you start with a Tele platform? It's really hard for me to make that decision. I don't know. It would be difficult for me at this point. Probably a Strat, but I don't know, because you could basically do just the same amount of stuff. If you started with a blank body, or you know, some kind of swimming pool route or something, you could do just as much stuff with both guitars. So it would come down to shape, comfort, and that sort of thing. knowing that all of these mechanics are actually identical on both guitars, which you may have not thought of before. Anyway, get in the comments and let me know. It's a hard decision for me. I think I would go Strat and then build my own Strat thing out of it, as I have done many times. Let me know in the comments. If you want to get any of this stuff, DylanTalksTone.com. We've got a bunch of it. Check it out. Pickups, all that kind of stuff. Thanks again for watching. We'll talk to you in the next video.